It is my pleasure to introduce to you our opening keynote speaker for today, Muraya, the founder and CEO of Brand Strategy and Designs. She has over 2 decades of marketing experience, having led marketing and regional brand development for leading brands such as FedEx, Standard Group, Block Hotels, and Xerox. She's also very well known for her award-winning advertising and branding franchise, Colors Creations. And she's also very much actively involved in leadership initiatives and civic duties in the continent through her role with Kwabo, the Kenyan Association of Women Business Owners. She has been able to create a forum that provides for networking, intellectual engagement, and skills development for Kenya's business female leaders. Kwabo is also an initiative in partnership with ABWN, the African Business Women's Organization, which is a partnership initiated by ExxonMobil Foundation, Vital Voices, and regional women's business associations. She's also the chair of the Zawadi Africa Education Program, which is an initiative that provides scholarship to academically gifted African ladies from economically challenged regions and allows them an opportunity to come to schools like Harvard, essentially. Eva is a recipient of numerous awards, including the Eve Woman Entrepreneur Award, the MSK Warrior Award, a Goldman Sachs Global Leader Award, and is very actively involved in Vital Voices and a member of the La Pietra Coalition. And Eva is recently and happily married to Mashua Koinange, and between both of them, they have 5 teenage children. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome a woman who, in my short time, I've come to admire and respect exceedingly, Eva Muraya.
Thank you so much. Good morning. How many Africans in the room? Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much, Akin, Jessica, for your warm reception. Oh my goodness, this is I don't know how to explain how I'm feeling, because Professor Dudley, this is the future of Africa right here. And it is amazing to be here, to be participating in such an engaging conversation, and to be African in the context of telling stories, because that's what we're really good at. We have told stories, and they have built us, and they have made us who we are today, to experience the possibilities that the continent provides for us. I want to acknowledge a corporate partner of mine, Vital Voices, and appreciate them, because over the last several years, probably the last 8 years of my life, Vital Voices has been a critical supporter. They have allowed me to engage with amazing global women leaders. I have sat by the feet of really amazing women and learned many things, some of which will inform some of the stories that I will hopefully share over the next odd half hour, 40 minutes. Africa, redefining Africa. About 4 years ago, I was sitting in business school in Nairobi at the Strathmore Business School, and our professor put up a picture that he said was a picture of the world at night taken by NASA. I don't know whether you all might know what I'm talking about, but this picture has really informed who I have become in the last 4 odd years. My worldview has been in many ways shaped around what this picture depicted. Picture of the world at night, and I was busy looking for the African continent and wondering who turned off the lights. Because, it wasn't quite. So as I share my story this morning, a story of a girl who was born and raised and educated in Kenya, a girl who, for the most part, never really understood that there was anything more to do with life beyond knowing that you go to school and then you get employed, and then you work very, very hard for your employer. I'm suggesting that the whole conversation of entrepreneurship really came very late for me and most likely for my generation. So this is a girl looking at a continent and wondering, is this really all that there is to our continent? Isn't there another story that we can tell? So I approach this conversation saying that for me, it will always be a continent that is half full glass and never half empty. And I think from Professor, your conversation here just now was really to remind us that there is so much to tell on the half full. So I'll share very quickly some stories because today is about telling the stories. And these stories perhaps emerge from the fact that to light Africa, and I can see lots of champions here that perhaps from today and on will take on the baton to light Africa. Global education, like what we enjoy here at Harvard School, is non-negotiable. Issues around strong institutions, smart economics, good governance and leadership, strong values of our people, technological readiness, financial markets that are vibrant, that are relevant, issues around growing and building our brand and telling the right message about Africa become non-negotiable. Skilled human capital, issues around goods and market efficiency, global best practice. These are things that I believe can become the norm, can become the way in which we will then begin to light Africa. The Economist magazine, as you all might recall, once upon a time called us the hopeless continent. But it was quite interesting for me about a year ago to see the very same magazine begin to say there's a different story going on the continent. Again, affirmed by an Accenture report in 2010 that began to call us the new frontier. So truly there must be some new stories coming on. As an entrepreneur who has been in Kenya the last 12 years, having worked in corporate Kenya, but then set up businesses about 12 years ago, I have had the experience of knowing that it is not an easy territory to set up business. Wasn't easy to access credit, as a woman, especially because of the prejudicial issues around access to credit. Wasn't easy to access technical skill, wasn't easy to understand how to get into regional business at the time, and things were generally complicated. Cost of doing business, as you all will recall, was extremely difficult when I began in about 2000. But here's this thing. Things have changed. Things are changing. Things must change. And I love what a friend who has become a friend, Tony Elemilo from Nigeria, keeps saying to us, that nobody is going to change Africa except us. So it's not going to be anyone other than the African people who will need to craft innovative solutions that then will accelerate the opportunities that our continent is faced up with. So let's talk about perhaps technology. What's the story of technology? Allow me or indulge me as I share my stories. They may seem a little East African skewed, but as I share them, really it's because this is my personal experience and my personal journey. Technology hasn't gotten better than in Africa. Do you agree? Stories around mobile telephony, like the M-Pesa, and the impact that the mobile money transfer is having on our people. Most successful mobile phone-based financial services in the world. These are the stories that need to begin to be told. That in Kenya, M-Pesa in the last year has transferred nothing less than 20% of national GDP through the phone. That people are saving, that people are repaying their microfinance loans through mobile phone technology, and that over 15 million Kenyans today are the beneficiaries of this M-Pesa service, and that it is integrated with over 700 businesses in Kenya. What a phenomenal story. Would you have ever imagined such a story coming out of the continent 10 years ago? That we can pay school fees for our children through M-Pesa services. And I can tell you stories of some friends of mine, like Ken Joroge, the CEO of Cellulant, an amazing, amazing technology business. And through this business of his, he is beginning to transform the whole way in which agriculture is done across borders. I know of a project that he is currently involved in Nigeria that is beginning to transform and shorten the production conversion cycle of agriculture. And for that, then of course, the benefit of cash conversion. Virtual City with John Waivoshi out of Kenya, amazing business that is beginning to create such business sophistication in distribution strategies for businesses in Africa. Craft Silicon, providing amazing backup for financial services, not just in Kenya and East Africa, but across the continent. And these businesses are aligning IT with the business requirements that have begun to emerge. Increasing business agility, therefore, and managing by far business risk as we have known it. Technology is not just left within the context of private sector. Government has embraced technology. I mean, we could talk about Bank of Ghana, and we could look at Ghana and see what technology has begun to do. But if I was to bring it home to Kenya, you all probably are wondering, what is this Kenyan doing here with an election just like in 10 days' time? I can see all of you thinking like that. But you know what? After the sorrowful experience of 2008 post-election chaos, today technology gives me confidence as a business person because my business was extremely affected by the post-election violence that we suffered in 2008. But here we go, application of e-governance to the extent that the electoral system is now embracing biometric technology gives me confidence that it will be better, and it will be truthful, and it will be real. Governments utilize today's technology to improve their effectiveness in serving their citizens. Things are getting more expedience in terms of government services. And this is some of the story of the continent. I don't know how many of you are aware or familiar with Konza City. Have you all heard about Konza City, which is the context of Kenya's Vision 2030? Well, Konza City is Africa's new Silicon Valley. Have you all heard? How many Kenyans in the room? I'm looking for you. Thank you. Beautiful story. Why? Because we will create for our continent, housed within Kenya, the very, very first Silicon Valley, so that investors can find opportunity to come and find an enabling environment through which to engage in business. Commercial office spaces are there, hotels can be built, real estate residential properties, large-scale commercial shopping malls, recreation and entertainment, the list goes on. Technology has created an absolutely fascinating, exciting, and new story coming out of the continent. Professor alluded to governance and leadership. That's another interesting, beautiful story coming out of the continent. Wasn't it amazing for us to watch the power of North Africa begin to say, enough is enough? Things could be better. We demand for it to be better. We hold you accountable. Beyond that, role model Ghana comes in and begins to change the whole way in which the story of Africa has been told before by giving us an election that was absolutely free and fair. Beautiful posters showed up saying ballots, not bullets. In terms of governance and leadership, 2 years ago, 2010, Kenya passed a new constitutional dispensation. Yes, so many years after independence, but it happened anyway. And with such amazing benefits for Kenyan people. Power moved away from what we had always been made to understand it belonged, down to the people. If you were probably as in tune with the story of Kenya's election just this week, for the very, very first time, Kenyans paraded 8 of their presidential aspirants in a presidential debate, said to them, you just stand there and you must answer our questions and tell us why it is you or you or you who we must give the opportunity to lead us. Because we are fed up of all the things that are going against making us a middle-income citizenry. In fact, the hashtag, I think, Kenya presidential debate was the highest trending conversation that day. And the presidential debate just begins to be one of several news stories that are coming out of the continent. Women in Kenya benefited from this inclusion. More equitable inclusion in matters that provide opportunity for them to engage became the thing that demonstrated a new story coming out of the continent. What about our raw materials, new ones? We know that Uganda and Kenya and Ghana have begun to engage and indulge these opportunities. Who is going to be part of the talent that comes into accelerating Kenya's, for example, largest wind farm by June of 2013? Who will be part of the new commercial biomass power plant that Kenya is already setting up? And then there's a new story around access to credit. And you know that for enterprise development, this is non-negotiable. What is it that is going on the continent or out of East Africa that is making the playing field even more level? We're familiar, perhaps, with Equity Bank, 100 years of banking in Kenya, and then shy of 15 years, Equity Bank comes up and revolutionizes the whole way in which we've had access to credit and financial inclusion. But beyond Equity Bank, other initiatives within Kenya that have offered opportunity, like the Kenya Women's Finance Trust, etc. We know the amazing story of EcoBank in getting into markets that have previously been considered unsafe and without much return. These are new stories coming out of the continent that provide opportunity for us to celebrate and say it can be done. Issues around health, development experts have for long recognized health as an important moral and social goal. And opportunities to set up exist. If I had more time, we could go into lots of conversations around structures and private equity funds that are beginning to find real good return in the health investment portfolios. I want to tell you another story, a story around a tool called voluntarism. And there are stories coming out of the opportunity for Africans to volunteer their skill and their time, because those who can do, but those who do more volunteer. And there's power in a corporate community such as yours here to see an opportunity of accelerating a story around voluntarism in the opportunities that the different governments and national economies across Africa presents. I want to talk about talent. I want to talk about sports and culture, different stories coming out of the continent, be it in soccer, be it in athletics, be it in rugby, be it in fashion, different stories coming out of our continent. But then, of course, it isn't quite done if I'm not going to talk about something very close to my heart, which is smart economics. The reality is, for most of history, Anonymous was a woman. But the reality is that investing in women has truly become smart economics. But even more importantly, investing in girls and catching them upstream is even smarter economics. I know that Akin, in his introduction, talked about my involvement with the Zawadi Africa Education Fund, maybe just to shed a little light about how that whole organization works. It's a leadership development program that provides university scholarships, leadership development, and life skills training to academically gifted but financially disadvantaged girls. And our vision really is to empower women to participate in the development of the continent through self-determination in new generations. Where is our inspiration coming from? Our inspiration is drawn from the airlifts of pre-independence Africa, where over 1,000 talented Africans from 5 countries were educated in the US and went on to become some of the region's greatest leaders. And notable graduates of the airlift program included the late Professor Wangari Maathai, and who was also Nobel Peace Prize winner, and Barack Obama Sr. Zawadi is committed to the development of its students through effective mentorship and an annual leadership conference that is held not just in the US, but also in Africa. So girls, and including them, means that decisions that are made concerning our continent will become inclusive, and they will become better, therefore, for any of our nations. And the story across the continent, we begin to see women taking up opportunities and roles that would not have been considered previously. This evening, I know we have Professor Ngozi, Dr. Ngozi, who will be speaking to us. Her role on the continent cannot in any way be discounted, and it continues to impact greatly. We recently saw the appointment of a woman to head the African Union. And we know women doing amazing work. In Kenya's political race right now for president, we have Martha Karua, who is an aspiring presidential candidate. 2 real quick stories as I wrap up is the space of mentorship. I am a beneficiary of a lot of mentorship, having been raised by my grandmother and spent many years listening to her wise counsel. And if perhaps I could even refer to an amazing African sportsman in Dikembe Mutombo. I love a quote that he has shared before, and he says that, you know, if someone sends you an elevator to take you to the top, you must always remember to send it down so that someone else can use it. And this, I think, is one very powerful way in which we can accelerate and tell a new story on the continent. Vital Voices, who I had referred to, have done an amazing piece of work in incapacitating women and girls on the continent. Since 2000, Vital Voices has supported and worked with African women leaders in generally 3 program areas: economic empowerment, political participation, and the whole space of human rights, reaching well over 50,000 women throughout Africa and generating an additional $13 million in terms of investment that's directed in women as leadership programs in Africa. These are beautiful stories that we can understudy. These are beautiful stories that we can draw much strength and encouragement from. And we know other programs and models that include Equity Bank and what they are doing through their student programs that are supported by MasterCard Foundation, or even the African Leadership Academy that operates out of South Africa. I think for me, the one story that is especially dear to my heart, and perhaps because I am a brand strategist, is one beautiful story called Brand Africa, which is an initiative that seeks to position Africa for inevitable takeoff, because that's truly where we are. And through the excellent leadership of Dr. Nkosana Moyo, who I know will be with us today, this is an intergenerational engagement platform for decision makers, thought leaders, and influential global business thinkers, both in private, public, and civil society, so that we can engage with our peers, with youth, with the media, on issues and ideas that impact on the reputation, the competitiveness, and future of Africa. The Brand Africa Forum is complemented by a series of regional and diaspora Brand Africa roundtables. And so as I spend this time with you this morning, I would perhaps ask, how could you engage in creating a conversation that properly positions the continent so that the right stories continue to emerge out of the continent? And I could go on about our media, like in East Africa, the freedoms that are now being enjoyed by our media, like in East Africa, Nation Media Group has completely opened up. We can talk about anything, we can tell anything, and it is for us to create cohesion, therefore, on the stories that are emerging out of Africa. So as I finish, I want to ask a question. How do we accelerate the process of redefining the African story? What is it that we must do as Africans to engage and defend the position of Africa? I want to very quickly suggest a couple of things. The first is that we must have courage. We must have the audacity to dream and dream big dreams. We must have the audacity not to maintain status quo. We have to have the courage to think differently and believe better in our capability and our strengths. The second is exactly what we're doing here at Harvard Business School. Our capability. Let us be the very best that we could possibly be. Let us align our skills, our attitude, and our passions to the opportunities that the continent provides us. But then again, we must raise men and women of character, because for too long, the story of Africa has challenged the character of the people of the continent. We must then become men and women whose character is known to be a certain and a definite. But then again, we must be men and women who are committed to the cause. This isn't something that will be realized overnight. Absolutely, by listening to what Professor reminded us of Nelson Mandela's quote, we must take time to look where we're coming from, but then we must realize that the commitment necessary to go further is even much more indulging. And finally, this continent cannot be addressed effectively, successfully, without us wearing a lens of compassion. The solutions that we must proposition to the continent, the way in which we must address the issues of the continent can only be realized through wearing a lens of compassion in order to address the issues that plague us. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Eva. We're going to open up for Q&A. We don't have a lot of time. We have about 10 minutes, so please, if you have questions, you can come up to the microphones here, over there, and I will beseech you to keep your questions very concise and to the point, please, because we don't have a lot of time. Thank you.
It's great. They're not
Okay, guys, I'm going to get us warmed up here, but I want to see people coming down for questions. So Eva, I would ask you, what advice would you give young people who are in the workforce at that stage in their career where they're trying to decide, should I move back to Africa? Should I stay in the US to get more experience? What advice would you give them to guide that decision?
Okay. I think that there's power in both, because if I was to share from my personal story, the reason I believe that my businesses have done well is because of the skill and experience I gained whilst in corporate. So that works. However, if you take a case of Kenya, for example, because of the new constitutional dispensation that we're going through, there will need to be lots of skill, best skill, getting engaged in delivering of a lot of the strategies that have been crafted. And I'm sure that that's case in point for Rwanda or Ghana or any of the African countries. So I think gaining the experience whilst you have the opportunity, but keeping your eye on the ball, that you will be doing it because there is a bigger agenda that awaits you. Because Africa does need the best minds, the best skill, but by far the best attitude in order to deliver on the various strategies that different national economies are engaging in.
Hi, thank you. That was fascinating. I'm from North Africa. I grew up in East Africa. I worked in West Africa, and now I'm a partner with KPMG here in the United States, helping that corridor between the US and Africa. We talk about Africa as one brand, but really the diversity of Africa is so vast between the regions. Should we be talking about Africa now as East Africa, West Africa, South Africa, or would that fragment it even more?
I think that there is power in diversity, and I quite agree. In a branding world, there would be a mother brand Africa, and then there would be a sub-brand East Africa, and West Africa, and South Africa, and North Africa, because within those sub-brands there is intrinsic value in what it is their proposition would be, and perhaps it can never quite be the same as the East. I think that depending on the situation, we would be able to call it, like today, Brand Africa. But when it is, we are probably thinking at a sub-brand level, we would then proposition the best selling proposition for East Africa and present that to the world. Because that's the reality of our diversity, and that's why we're a beautiful people.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Danford, and as you were talking, I was making a box, and you alluded to judiciary changes in Kenya, the media, the electoral reforms, but I feel like the picture is not complete without you addressing the security sector reform. Do you have anything to say about that?
Okay. I think that without overstepping my turf, the picture is indeed not complete, and that is correct. But you're also aware that we have only recently appointed a Police Inspector General and his deputies, and that indeed, especially after everything that happened post-2008, there are deliberate and structured ways in which security is being addressed. The fact that it is even being addressed is a beautiful story to come and share right here. But yes, I completely agree with you that we have had by far very successful judiciary reforms, and the spin-off means that there is better confidence for investors, et cetera, including the citizenry, and that there have been successes in some of those spaces, some beginning later than others, but absolutely intended to present a holistic solution. Because the truth of the matter is, as Africans, we really do want a better day for our various and respective nations. So yes, it is only a little late in the day, but happening nonetheless. And it has given Kenyans, if I was to speak for Kenyans, the confidence that we will tide through the next month or 2 or 12 months and years to come safely.
Thank you.
At this conference last year, there was much talk about the desire for investment and jobs and no longer charity.
Yes.
But there is a sector, a global sector, which applies business models to solve social problems. It's called social enterprise.
Yes.
So it has the capability to create both jobs and investment, but also to address the specific deficiencies that are keeping people from moving forward. Could you comment on the view from Africa of the social enterprise ecosystem and whether or not it's present and whether or not it is supported in Africa by African companies?
I think that in my very last comment, saying that Africa must be addressed through the lens of compassion is truly the reality. That a cocktail of the various systems must be what will apply on the continent. So if I was to attempt to respond, I would say that there is definitely a space and an opportunity and a willingness to accelerate even social entrepreneurship, because the disparities are real. They are not imagined. We still have very poor people who may be gifted differently, but opportunities have not come to them for reasons that we don't even have the time to get involved in right now. But I would say that even with social entrepreneurship being a very functional, practical way to address, there will be it together with other systems that cocktail and bring about the best dividend possible for the people of Africa. I hope that that begins to attempt a response. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Julia. I'm a graduate of the African Leadership Academy. And as we witness this vast industrialization across the continent, I'm wondering if you can speak to the emerging role of green technologies.
If I could do what, sorry?
Speak to the emerging role of green technologies.
Oh, wow. Any help? It's inevitable. We just must embrace it. If we had more time, I had a few notes to address that, but it is definitely the way that we have to go. And the beauty of it is that Africa, in its quote-unquote infancy, has the best opportunity to learn from the rest of the world in what not to do. So this is what I would suggest and proposition, that we are really sitting at a cool place. Does that sound cool when I say that, a cool place? Cool place because we have so much to soak in and so much to sieve and so much to say we don't need to go that route because it takes longer for us to arrive at a sustainable solution. So I think that it's non-negotiable, that enterprise today is having to embrace it. The different governments, like in Kenya, have put in place institutions that are ensuring that the sensitivities and the cognizance of the role of green economy is being considered, that a lot of the technical skilling and training is including that as a critical component in sharing knowledge and capacity to even entrepreneurs across the country. Okay? Thank you for surviving my presentation.
Eva, thank you very much for the address. On behalf of the African Business Club and the conference, we would like to thank you for your address, and we'd like to present you with an award and a gift from Yaswara. And we hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.